So
It's live.
click, click, click. Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going, Tom?
It's going pretty good. Nice to see you, bud.
Good, good. Yeah, it's been a while. So I was actually, for those of you in the chat hanging out with us, appreciate you stopping by. I was actually just telling Skipper here that I've kind of been a little bit all over the world lately, and that's no joke. I've been everywhere from Thailand to Iceland to Germany, and a little bit of the United States action going on. So that's why you guys haven't seen me much. There's about a month where I actually put out a bunch of videos on some filter maintenance, UV sterilizer stuff, just some little stuff to keep you guys in the loop and let you know that I was alive. Right now, I'm actually down in Oklahoma for a month, so it'll probably be a little bit quiet on the video home front, other than maybe some live streams here and there. I left the wife and kid at home. Wife just opened a store, so she's busy with that. And the kids started school a couple weeks ago. So I'm down here on my own, which means that one, I get to focus on studying for work a little bit. I'm here for some upgrade training. And then two, I don't feel as guilty hanging out with you guys tonight. What's up, Terry? How you doing, bud?
Dude, I didn't get to hear most of that, man. You're doing great things, and I missed it.
I don't know if I'd say I'm doing great things.
Well, cooler than
I've just been
doing.
kind of wandering around the world a little bit.
Yeah, you're wandering around the world. I'm running around a blast furnace.
Well, gotta make money somehow, right?
One's way cooler than the other.
Yeah.
Well, the job has some perks. So
yeah, it does.
But it looks like we got a handful of folks in here. Obviously, welcome to Tom from Skipper's Aquariums, Terry from Terry's Tropical Tanks. Glad to have you guys here. It's been a while since I've been able to catch up with any of you, really. Like you guys heard, I've been running all over the world. Welcome to everybody that's in the chat again. Thanks for stopping by, Vinoxki, Zen Ginger, Danny Weshy, the Glass Box Hero, and everybody that's here. Thanks again. It's a pleasure to talk to you. Like I said, it's been a long time. The fish room has been a little bit neglected. The 125 is actually in pretty good shape, believe it or not. Brittany's been taking care of everything. I was only home for about 4 days last week. I've been gone the rest of the month. I was downstairs in the fish room, and I have 3 pairs of Cryptoheros nanoluteus, and all 3 pairs are sitting on fry right now. So they've probably got about 25 to 30 fry a piece. So in about a month, I'm going to have nanoluteus running all over the place.
Wow.
Ain't it amazing where you can have some fish and you try to breed them and it's not working, and then you just neglect the crap out of them and they spawn.
Oh, it's funny how that works. The tanks they're in. So I have each pair in a 15-gallon tank, which is like a squatty little 20 with about 5 gallons cut off the top. So it's a great tank. If I could find more, I would. I don't even know if they make them anymore.
I don't think they do, actually.
Because so I've got each pair in a 15 with just some.
No, I don't think they make the 15 the 15-gallon long. Was that what you were referring to?
No, so it's not a long. It's like a short, squatty 20 high, kind of. It's a weird. It's a.
Okay,
I'm trying to think of the dimensions.
God, I haven't seen one of those in a long time.
So, well, no, it's not. It's not a tall tank. It's only 12 inches wider than a 10, and it's got a couple extra inches front to back. So I've got them on end. You can see them in the videos of my fish room. But anyway, it's a super cool little tank. I haven't seen them for sale in forever. I have 6 of them that I picked up from some other breeders. Excuse me. But anyway, I've got a pair of Cryptoheros nanoluteus in each one. So if you're not familiar, the common name is like the blue-eyed convict or the gold convict, because they are related to convicts. They're in the crypto heroes. They were spawning in my 125 when I had the big Chilathrine Alani in there. I decided to tear that tank down and redo it. So I moved all the Nanoluteus out into separate tanks so that I could procure some more fry a little bit easier. And they weren't doing anything right away. I left for work for about 3 weeks, and I came home and they were spawns. No water changes. I keep right around about 100 TDS, maybe 75, 76 degrees, and my wife's just been feeding them flake food while I was gone. So pretty easy fish to spawn, which is good because it is a care species. So definitely, I've been spreading them around the area. There's a guy in Kentucky that wants me to ship him some, a guy in Tennessee that wants some, a couple guys across the state here. So trying to get them around. And Alishan mentioned that they are a Mottliana, which I wasn't sure if they were officially reclassified or not. Group of fish is Liana. Latin's hard. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Now, honestly, God,
but other than that, so like,
honest to God question, are they dividing up the convict group? Are they putting them in different genuses?
Can't hear you, Mike.
I think I haven't tracked it super closely. I've been so busy with work this year on the road that I haven't been able to follow it much. I know that the Nanoluteus. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
You're spotty.
So I'm not sure the Nanoluteus. I've seen both Crypto Heroes and Amatiliana. Hold on, give me a second.
I'm not really good with like. There's a whole group of fish that I used to like group back in the day that were like just all convicts, but they're actually getting divided up now into individual geniuses, and all things fish would know a hell of a lot more about it than I do.
It makes me wonder if they're finding different ones or if, uh, how you say it, if as they're breeding them out, these other colors are coming up. Does that make sense or no?
No, it makes sense, but is it? Are these new colors coming out? Are they actually this genus, or are they? It's the same thing they did with a lot of the African cichlids, and
Oh, okay.
the South American cichlids are constantly getting regrouped, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
You almost need a play-by-play book, like if you're watching a Sunday night football game on how in the heck all this goes together.
I mean, it definitely does kind of make sense because whenever you look at it that way with like the other cichlids, Alishon says splitters versus lumpers. Yeah. But it kind of does to me make sense. Ooh, we get to take this over. This ain't good.
I think he had a pretty crappy internet connection.
Yeah, he's staying at a hotel down in Oklahoma right now, so he probably has to figure it out. But kind of makes sense what you said with the cichlids, how South American cichlids were they're coming up with different ones because that technically would be a genetic thing, right? So maybe that's what's going on with the.
It's above all these decisions, and these name changes are all done way above my pay grade, man.
How about her?
I just try to keep up with them, but it gets a little hard sometimes. It really does. You know, if you're not paying attention to a particular group of fish, it's easy to miss. You know, it happens to me all the time. If I go to a fish swap and I'll look at this and I'll be like, I never heard of these before, and the person behind the counter will go, oh yeah, they used to be called this and this, and I'm like, oh, all right, I know those.
Okay. This is what it used to be. This is what it is now.
All right, how's this sound, guys?
That sounds good.
Yeah, you sound
All
great.
right, I'm trying to think. I'm on my laptop, so I'm trying to figure out if it's a laptop problem or a connectivity problem. So we're doing a little troubleshooting over here. So we'll see how this goes now.
I'll
but no,
drop
you're
back
talking
down.
about the reclassification of some of the convicts. Oh no, you're fine, Terry. I think it's on my side. We'll see if I cut the video out for a while, if it works a little bit better here. I've got a bunch of different tabs open on my laptop for questions that I wanted to kind of address a little bit too, so that's probably not helping my situation over here.
No, that probably isn't. Probably be a good thing to start getting into that, and then
So
get through them. When you click it off, it might help.
well, and we can go that route too. So you guys kind of know. Oh, thanks, Danny. I appreciate it. It's a my face problem. So we'll just get rid of my face, and then we should fix that. So I've done this before in some of the streams where I'll go find some questions on the old face space, and we'll just kind of touch on a couple questions. So I'll see if I can share those over the screen here without killing my laptop. Otherwise, we'll move on and we'll just chat, because I haven't chatted with Skipper and Terry and the rest of you guys in a while. So it'd be nice to talk a little nonsense with you guys, whether that's fish related or otherwise.
I wish my mustache was
A
as
few of
dark
these.
as Skipper's
Yeah.
is. Man,
And
that-
when you put some light on it, it gets a little redder.
yeah, mine gets grayer.
Don't get it twisted, man. I got some grays in here, so I'm getting there. I can't even pronounce them names that Alishon's throwing out there. Like, that's like a big.
Cyclosoma, and all the Malawi haplochromines as haplochromis. That all got changed. The haplochromis in the African cichlids is like unheard of, except for just a couple species. They're all like Metroclima, and that's the zebra complex. Yeah, there's a whole book written on that shit.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've been starting to look at stuff like books and stuff like that just to see like what's out there, and there seems to be quite a bit out there now.
Oh, is it Malawi or Malawi? You know what? It's a freaking lake. I can call it whatever I want.
Isn't that the truth?
I don't know. I always thought it was Lake Malawi, but it could be Malawi. I don't know.
Yeah, Malawi. Yeah, Malawi. Yeah.
I'm not real up on my pronunciations, so I'll roll with whatever somebody.
But I did get the
asked me to say.
cyclosoma. The only species left in cyclosoma is the peacock bass, right? As far as I know, that was the actual original cichlid classification. Cyclosoma ocellatus is the peacock bass, and I think that's the only group left in cyclosoma. And then you got the haplochromis, or the haplochromines, which was huge back in like 70s, 80s, but those have all been divided up. So Yeah. Honest to God, I think the only honest to God cyclosoma species or complex, because there's multiple species, is the Ocellaris, which is a peacock bass.
Okay.
I think. Yeah, I could be wrong. Cyclosoma ocellatus, I think, is the only legit cyclosoma out there. All the haplochromos used to be a catch-all for like everything, and the last holdouts were the Lake Victoria species, and even those have been divided up now. So yeah, it's crazy.
Hmm.
You need a book to follow all this stuff so you know what you're actually getting.
Unfortunately, a lot of the good books that were out there are now outdated as they've decided to reclassify or reorganize some of the different groups.
The best ones I've come across as far as actually dividing things up accurately are the Aqualog books, but they're
Mhm.
extremely expensive,
Yeah, it's
especially the African cichlid one.
yeah, it's unfortunate that it's so cost prohibitive. I've got a stash of older books. I don't know, sit on my face. So I brought that on the road with me. When you buy complete fish rooms from older guys that have been in this game for a long time, you get a lot of cool. Like I got 2 boxes of books, and he was big into Achilles, so he had all the AKA newsletters and stuff in a box that he sent with all the fish room. So you have no shortage of literature. I've been trying to work my way through, and it's just tough to figure out some of the stuff that is or isn't outdated anymore because there's a lot. Uh, like I don't if you follow Alexander Williamson, he does a lot of the news stuff, like weird fish news on some of the newly discovered species and whatnot. And if you're friends with any killifish nuts, or if you follow the killie guys at all, they use a boatload of more or less genetic testing anymore to
Right.
try to separate and classify different species.
Well, so do the cichlid guys now. Yeah, they've been doing that for a while now, and that's why all the names changed. Uh, I don't know. Let's talk about something else. Because I don't have anything else to say about it except that I mean it's cool that we have all this differentiation between it all now where I mean think about it, when you first started keeping cichlids, everything was a haplochromine or or cyclosoma, or you know now they've finally spread them out enough to where they sort of make sense if you're a new fish keeper. If you're an old fish keeper, you're freaking lost.
Right. So yeah, it's tough to keep up with. Fortunately, you can be extremely successful in the hobby without keeping up on uh, scientific, what would that be, zoology classification itself. Um, but yeah, so there's cool stuff like that. But moving on, now that we've kind of beat that topic to death a little bit.
Sorry, my bad.
No, Alishan started it. Alishan started talking about
Well, and then Alishan's over there going, peacock bass are in the genus Cichla. Yeah, that stands for Cyclosoma.
so uh, so yeah, that's enough of that. A lot of it involves Latin that I can't pronounce, and I fumble my way through it. However, I don't know, as much of a pain in the ass as trying to pronounce Latin names is, I try to stick with the Latin names for different species because, particularly with plants, there's a lot of the times you run into the same common name or multiple different common names for the same species of fish. So for the sake of clarity, I try to at least attempt scientific names. Um, so it helps a lot with just clarification. I think there's somebody the other day in a local group that posted up some plants, and they thought they had guppy grass because I've heard a few people refer to it as guppy grass, but it wasn't guppy grass at all. So guppy grass is generally like Najas guadalupensis. It's the real thin stemmed stuff that you typically see. But she actually had hornwort, which is drastically different. It has like needle shaped leaves that
Way
everybody's familiar with. But she's like, well, so and so said that it was hornwort. I'm like, well, I'll help you out and save you the hassle next time. So I try to stick with scientific names a little bit. Um, anyway, Danny, I saw that you were sharing some channels earlier. I appreciate the help, bud. Glad to have you around, and I eagerly await the next video that you happen to release for the rest of our enjoyment. I know you generally dabble in more of the rock genre, which I enjoy, but I still think you should do some sort of rap god type parody, little Eminem action. That is true. But anymore nowadays, there's even particularly with Achilles, and Achilles are uh, a lot more difficult to track because so many of them look the same. But you kind of see that in cichlids a little bit too.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
absolutely true in cichlids. If you get a particular cichlid, where you can trace it back to an honest to God collection point, and you have another one from another collection point, yeah, nobody's gonna want those.
right.
I don't want to use the term hybrid because if they're the same species, technically it's not a hybrid, but it kind of sort of is in this particular situation. But yeah, nobody wants those.
Yeah.
You know,
So
you're as a fish breeder, the better your name is going to be is the quality of your fish and how true they are to a specific location, and that's very true in killifish, cichlids. um you got to be specific in this world anymore. It's just the
right,
way it is.
and a lot of whether people agree with it or not, a lot of a fish's value is whether you can track it to a specific collection point itself.
Correct.
Um, so two fish may look fairly similar, but there are distinct characteristics generally of a certain collection point of fish, and those are highly sought after. Plus, if you can track the lineage back to somebody that was known to for sure have that, and they've logged their journals and whatnot, that's going to add validity and credibility to their fish, and it's going to increase value. It's going to keep a and I'm not trying to sound like an elitist, like uppity yuppie type
No,
guy.
you're a
Uh,
freaking elitist, just say it.
uh,
But you're
but
no different than the rest of us. If I'm going to go after a particular species of Victorian, I'm going to make sure that what I am getting is an absolute 100% direct descendant from wild.
mhm.
If I can't prove that, I'm not going to spend the money.
Oh yeah, for sure. And
That,
some people are okay with, well, as a matter of fact, I'd say 95% of people are okay with not knowing the lineage and not having a pure line of fish, if you will, because look at all the assorted mutt cichlid tanks, and
oh, yeah, absolutely.
it's just like there's that. Johnny said he wishes Dan would let him make up common names for fish. I think that would be particularly interesting. If you look at a lot of the guppy strains, there's a lot of
Yeah.
made up names involved in
Oh my
guppies,
God. It's
um,
horrible.
and guppy color names have started to veer into the coral naming category, where
Yeah.
you get radioactive ape shit zoas and purple
the
nurple pallies.
You have to admit the Zoa common name thread is the absolute best common names for anything. They all involve hippie dudes that have nothing else better to do but smoke dope.
They get creative though, that's for sure. And you'll see, we were talking about lineages. You'll see certain people, whether it's a breeder or a coral propagator, because they're not really a breeder, they'll attach their names to it, and value starts to go up because they themselves have certain credibility, right?
Sure.
So
But then other people jump on that bandwagon and it just gets ugly.
oh yeah. So on the rainbow side, you'll see, well, these rainbows came from somebody like, we'll use Gary Lang as an easy example. Like, oh well, he knows his stuff. He's made several collection trips. You can trust him and trust the health of those fish, right? On the coral side, you'll see names like Jason Fox thrown around, and or company names, like they'll attach their company name to a certain color morph of a zoa or whatever, and then that morph, even though we've probably seen it a million times before, because they advertise it and they market it.
Sure.
Because obviously there's only so many color variations that we're going to see. Like they're like slight little tweaks here and there, but somebody hasn't seen it for a while, so they throw their name on it, they market it, or they advertise it, and all of a sudden somebody wants something that everybody and their brother has probably kept before. They just didn't put a fancy name on it and try to upsell it at Macna or anything.
That's exactly how guppies work, man. Yeah, no, and well, see, the guppy hobby's gotten a little crazy. I've always been attached to like American standards, but once the world standard came in, it just got crazy with names and you got all these recipe guppies coming in, and they have all these creative names, and you might have the most beautiful American blues on a planet, which anybody, if they actually seen in person, would be like, these are the coolest guppies ever, but they can't compete with all the other names. Oh,
Yeah.
your guppies are only American blue?
Right.
Yeah, they're the coolest freaking American blues you're ever gonna see.
Right. And that's like, so if you look at guppies, like, so there's Hawaiian blue Moscows, and then as soon as you attach Luke Roebuck's name to the Hawaiian blue Moscows, their price probably doubles just because you
Right.
attach Roebuck's name to it. And you'll see that with so Gary Moso, he's got half black yellows. Is actually articles referring to him as Mr. Half Black Yellow because he's won the division and the IFGA competition so much. So it's funny, even though a million people have fish that look exactly the same, as soon as you put that particular person's name and associate it with it,
Sure, the
the
value
price
goes
and the
up.
desirability goes crazy.
Absolutely. And you did say Gary Lang. Gary Lang is a very respectable breeder, and if you can build your name on a whole bunch of integrity of being one of the best people in the hobby, then yeah, your fish are going to demand a high price,
And that's where,
and your lineage of fish are going to demand a high price.
oh yeah, and that's where I've ranted about it a million times. Like as it's becoming easier to spawn fish, as we domesticate fish a little bit more, and it's easier. Like anybody and their brother can spawn. Anybody off the street I can name probably 20, 30 different fish that they could put in a glass box of water, and they will spawn with decent success, even if they have no idea what they're doing, just because the fish have become accustomed to domestic type parameters and conditions.
Sure.
So it's our duty to each other, to ourselves, to the hobby, to produce. If you want to breed fish and distribute fish, produce the best fish that you can get. That's why you see these.
Yeah, but see, there's an issue, and what do you consider the best? I mean, if you look back to the very first domesticated fish, which would be the goldfish, look what we turned it into. And what is the best? You
Right.
know,
And
it becomes this convoluted series of branches that,
sure,
you know, it's
but
kind of like dog breeding. It's God. What is the best? You
right.
know,
And
is
I
it?
guess
No, go
the the
ahead.
direct the direction I'm trying to go with it isn't necessarily what is the best fish, but the best quality that we can provide, right? So we don't want to spawn deformed mutts and then distribute them into the hobby. We need to, if you're if you want to spawn fish, you have to be willing to cull fish, whatever
I
manner, whatever manner you choose. You need to any genetic deformities, they go. Uh, so any undesirable traits, anything, if you have a line of fish and for some reason, whether it's due to inbreeding or whatever, it's just an unhealthy strain of fish, cut it out. Don't distribute that in the hobby. That's junk. Like you owe it to yourself. If you're going to go through the work of spawning fish, spawn quality fish. And if you're going to, that's why this breeding for profit craze drives me freaking crazy. Uh, because look what you can do with a 10-gallon tank and a trio of guppies and some guppy grass, and then you throw some shrimp in the bottom. You can. I made X number of dollars this month because I sold 20 mud ass guppies. It's like, but they're junk. They're garbage. And that's what turns people off. If you distribute shit fish into the hobby, somebody's going to come along and buy them, and they're going to get your shit fish and get pissed off and get frustrated, and then they're going to get out of the hobby, right?
Yeah.
Or and generally speaking, if you produce and try to distribute enough fish, your name gets out pretty quick. Like especially at local swap meets, people figure out who produces junk and who's actually bringing decent fish. Unfortunately, anybody can, whether you're flipping imports out of Thailand out of your basement, or you just have 20 tanks set up in your basement and you're spawning mutt guppies and just selling them online. It's easy to market your shitty fish to a wide variety of people, and it's not going to come back to you for a long time.
You can actually produce if you want to talk guppies. I'll give you an example. I bought some guppies. What, I don't know, damn near last year. It's been about a year. I bought them and I was like, all right, I'll try them out. I got them to F2 and did not like a thing I saw. And not only did I just get rid of F2, I got rid of F1 and F0. They are no longer in my fish room. I was like, if I can't produce a quality fish by F2, then I don't want any of these. You got to go. See you later. Goodbye.
Right. And I'm not saying you have to produce the most colorful fish, but from a
I have
health
my
and
standards. They did
right,
not meet my standards. That's
mhm,
it. You're out.
right. And I'm leaning towards just everybody will have a different standard as to what they're willing to
Sure.
pay or what they
Sure.
want in their fish room.
Absolutely.
Just from a health standpoint, like it's not cute that you rescued some deformed fish with a jacked up back. That's not
Yeah.
doesn't promote anything. It doesn't promote good husbandry because, and the same thing can be said from a breeder or from Petco. If you buy crap fish from a breeder, that's just going to encourage them to keep selling those crap fish. If you
Right.
go rescue a freaking beta from Petco, that's just going to encourage them to keep putting more shitty betas on the shelf and not take care of them because somebody's going to come buy it eventually because whether they feel bad for it or whatever. So quit buying shit fish from people. Damn it. God.
I am a big fan of I just like to explain it to people that you did not, if you paid for it, you did not rescue it, you bought it. And they're just going to keep putting more on the shelf if you keep buying them.
Hmm.
I get it. It sucks if you're that passionate about betas and you don't want to see a beta in the cup and you don't want to see that beta die, but they're not going to change the way they do things if you keep buying them.
Money talks. That's what it comes down to, is money talks.
They
So a
see
couple.
it as a trend, like that short body crap. They see it as a trend because it's actually a genetic defect, right? So
Oh
whenever
yeah,
people,
it's
yeah,
always been a balloon-bellied anything is a
yeah,
genetic defect, but but that's what I was gonna say earlier. It depends on what you're going for. I mean, look what we did to the very first domesticated fish in the hobby was the goldfish, and look what we did to it.
oh man, yeah, you got so many damn ugly goldfish, it ain't even funny.
Yeah, but there's
Just
also
saying.
it's the eye of the beholder, Skipper.
Mhm.
We've got all these fancy tailed freaking things now that and even my heart goes out to angelfish. I love angelfish. The angelfish I like are not wild angelfish. They're
Yeah,
domesticated. They have extremely long fins. They don't look anything like their wild ancestors.
no,
So all I'm trying to say is there's a little bit of a balance between can this fish maintain a healthy life and can it be aesthetically pleasing, but the aesthetically pleasing changes between you and you.
Oh yeah, that's
so
like Mickey said
here's
they
a
don't.
here's a question on top of that, right? So you're saying, and it has to do with that wild thing. So whenever you say, could this happen? Like you bring this fish in from the wild, right? And you keep breeding it, and you're doing it in a domesticated way. Would that not like change that fish a little bit though? Also, because
Sure. As you go along, you gotta look at as you grow your fry out, which are ones more close like the parents. Then you have some what they call sports, that look a little different. You separate those guys, and before you know it, you got two lines. You have a line that looks like the parents, and then you have a line that looks a little goofy.
Right. And like me said, some people aren't concerned about the pureness of a wild species. They just like nice fish. And that's great. Like Terry was saying, the angels that he likes aren't what you would consider a wild type angel. So he may be into like the veil tail or the high fin or the wide fin, which there's a different flavor for everybody. I'm just saying, breed quality fish, whether no, regardless of what it looks like. Like you're going to breed something that looks like what you want and what people desire, right? But just make sure that you are breeding and distributing healthy fish.
Healthy fish. Thank you. That's
yeah,
that.
That's
That's very important.
that's one
so.
of the that's that was one of the things behind the whole FishFam auction thing was to get the healthy fish out there,
Mhm.
as opposed to somebody wanting to go to Petco because they saw it. I ain't
Right.
gonna lie, I bought fish from Petco, and yes, some of them were good, but others have been bad. It just depends on where they get them from, and a lot of them are mass breeded, right? So whenever you get it from a hobbyist, you know that you're getting a good quality fish. Hopefully you are getting one from that hobbyist, but it's to
Hmm.
put it out there so that they have practice on making these good fish. You know what I mean? That's how I see it. I mean, I've always thought that, especially when I came back into this course, all I knew was Petco and LFSs.
Hmm.
Then I came into this world. This world showed me a lot of stuff. I've learned a lot of stuff about fish. Didn't know where, honestly, I didn't know where damn fish come from to begin with. Then I started learning. And now I see it is if it's a true hobbyist that wants to breed fish to make good fish, the best healthy fish that they can make, that's the ones you want to go for.
Right. And it's been interesting. I've enjoyed like seeing you get into the hobby a little bit more, Tom, over the past, year and a half or so that we've been talking. And it's nice to see uh, you mix what works from different points of view, and you do what works for you, and you try to promote and encourage decent husbandry, and you try to spread quality fish. So it's nice to see people getting into the hobby and seeing that and moving towards that. So
Yeah.
a couple people have mentioned in the chat, they're talking about like short-bodied fish, like you see short-bodied red-tailed cats. If you look at like your blood parrots, what do they call them? The polar blue parrots or whatever. It's like a convict hybrid. Um, so that's an example of a more or less deformity that have been selectively bred for. And I was actually listening to an aquarium guy's podcast earlier, and they were talking about, and they made some good points. There's only so many fish out there, and obviously we haven't
Yeah.
found them, and it's difficult to try to catch them and distribute them into the hobby. So people always want something new, so they're going to breed something that's different, whether that's
Yeah.
a different fin shape, a different body shape, and with fin shape, fortunately, in a captive domestic environment, fin shape doesn't really affect survival much. It's still a healthy fish. It just has longer fins, or not fins that you see wild. Like so an extremely long fin, like some of your long fin, like the bristle noses or the Corydoras, it's not beneficial to them in the wild. That doesn't it slows them down. It makes it more difficult to get around. It's easier for predatory fish to track them down and capture them. Same thing with like a wide fin or a veil tail on an angelfish. But in a domestic environment, it has no bearing on their health generally. Like they're
No.
still healthy fish. They're just aesthetically a little bit different. Unfortunately, when you get into the short bodied type fish, that is a absolute defect that 100% decreases that fish's overall health, their bodily functions, their lifespan, etc. And a couple people, I think, mentioned that in the chat.
They have. Somebody did.
Yeah. So
But
that's where I have.
what people don't understand is we've been coming across short-bodied fish for a long time. It is a genetic defect. It's been around for as long as I've been in fish keeping, and back in the day, the fish farms would just simply call those fish. Occasionally, one would slip by, but basically, it's a genetic defect that happens in pretty much every fish where they're missing vertebrae, so their spine winds up compressed, and it's always been considered a genetic defect until 5 years ago, where they were like, oh, look at this cute little
It
Right.
became a trend.
They figured out they could make money off it, is what it was, and dollars talk, like we said earlier. So Jen asked, what if a hybrid or selective cull resulted in a more healthy fish? Would those be accepted? Fish will always be accepted to an extent, especially if it's a more healthy fish. Go for it. A lot of the times we can create, healthy fish by hybridizing fish, and sometimes that's the only way. Big picture, there's some endangered species, whether it's fish or other animals, that the only way we can keep their genetics around for potential further use is to hybridize them. Which is unfortunate, but just because it's a hybrid doesn't mean it's unhealthy, right? So you can take and this might spark Terry's interest and get his wheels turning a little bit here. But if you take a guppy and an endler, they're two different fish. You can hybridize them easy enough, and it's still perfectly healthy. It's just a little bit different.
And I personally think that could happen in the wild too. How do you think you find different species?
Oh, and it does 100%.
Well, technically, if you give the honest to God scientific definition, it does not happen in the wild, because a true hybrid, it will be sterile.
Yes.
We generally tend to use the term in fish keeping as using the term hybrid. We use it very loosely. If you go guppy to Endler is actually a taxon of guppies, so technically they're not hybrids. because
There.
they produce viable fry, and technically it's not a hybrid. We use the term hybrid because we're
Right.
trying to differentiate between an Endler and a guppy, but it's not actually a true hybrid.
Right. That's great clarification. That was kind of the direction I was going. So we take different strains of fish, and we do uh, mix them together and interbreed a little bit, and we still end up with healthy fish. Um, so if we're talking about hybrids, we look at like blood parrots, where you take
God, that was a disaster to begin
you
with.
take two distinct species and legitimately hybridize them. And most blood parrots, I don't think all of them. I think like 95% of them are indeed sterile. I think there's
Yeah,
somehow a few floating around out there that can unfortunately reproduce, which
the actual genetic makeup of the parrot has been unclear for quite some time. They honestly don't think it was a hybrid, but it was a morph. It was a morph that happened with like and honest to God, what's the Amphicillus, what's the red parrot or Amphicillus? Damn it! I hate being old. The red devils.
red devils. Okay.
Amphicillus something or other. Anyways, they all the people that actually know what they were talking about is that it was actually a morph that came out of the Amphicillus. Fuck, I can't remember.
Is that labiatus?
I can't remember, dude.
Amphilophus labiatus is the red devil. If that's the direction you're going.
Yeah, the other one. Isn't there an Amphicillus or however you pronounce it that starts with a C?
Citronellus, the Midas?
Yeah.
Citronellus is the Midas. I could believe that.
Anyways, it was probably a recipe that happened. They probably had some morphs, and then they worked on the morphs, and it eventually turned into that conglomeration of a fish that can't even close its own mouth.
Yeah, that freak.
So that's unfortunate, but so we talked. We kind of killed that one, I think. On to the next rant, and this is less about fish themselves and more about, we'll say, content creators, because this I get.
I do not create content.
No, so, and this will probably ruffle some feathers, but I get why people do certain things, and those are people that are in the world of YouTube to make money, and the most recent one that I ran across, and you see it a lot, largely with equipment. They'll do a product review, right? And their product review is them opening it up out of the box and turning it on for like 5 minutes, and they're like, "Okay, this is product brew." But there was a large fish tube content creator that used a light that was sent to them for free, because the company emailed me and offered me the same deal, and they did a product review, and they titled the video some clickbaity nonsense like, "This might be the last light you'll ever need to buy." I'm like, "You've had it for 2 days." So that's not a product review. That's you opened it up out of the box, like, "Oh, these are my initial thoughts." If you want a product review, like, so I like, there's a lot of people out there that do decent, well, not a lot, there's a few that do decent actual product reviews. If you look at, like, I don't agree with everything that Bentley does, But when it comes to product testing and posting reviews and his 2 thoughts on something, he generally takes 6 to 9 months and puts a lot of thought and work into it. But Joe Blow YouTuber that's looking for some YouTube views posts some bullshit clickbait title about how this is the best light ever, and he's had it for 2 days and he got it for free. Uh, I
He
have
unboxed it and turned it on.
So
congratulations.
I can piggyback on that a little bit because I was also doing that. But what I was doing was unboxing it and showing you how it ran and what I thought about it. Now, I would have stated in that video if it was I don't even remember how I titled it, but it was kind of a review of what it was when it came out of the box. Like, does this thing mate well? Does it run good? Now, if you're going to do a full product review, you should do it for like a month or so, in my eyes. If you're, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can tell you for an example, these sponge filters that Higer has. I don't care. I'm going to throw it out there. I know that's what we're talking about. And I like them because the way they're set up. Now, I've had them for a while. I've actually gotten them on Amazon before because I got a bunch of different ones. And I was showing the different ones that I got, and I started running this particular one for a while. And I can honestly say it is a damn good filter because I've run it for more than a month. And I really like how it works. But I see what you're saying.
Now, can I expand it? I apologize for stepping on your toes, but can I
No. Go ahead.
expand it? Can I expand this just a little bit to species profiles too? You get these species profiles where they'll go into a pet shop, take B-roll, never actually kept the fish, run through everything Google says, and bam, they just did a species profile when they've actually never kept the fish. I have over here in this green covered tank are strawberry lepicinus that I refuse to do a species profile on until I have them for at least 2 years. You know, I got to know how this fish gets when it gets older. It might get nippy when it might be fine when it's young, but then it gets nippy as shit when it gets older. I don't know.
And like I said,
There's some rare loaches right there. I'm not going to do a species profile on them until I've had them for a while. You
Right.
can't just Google something and say, oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread and be credible.
right. And
You just can't do that.
I said we're talking about doing things that are beneficial to the hobby as a whole. Creating bullshit content just for the sake of content and views. It's easy to see who's trying to do it as a job and a source of income, and who's doing things to actually try to spread quality information. And two,
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Two, by posting garbage product reviews, you're just encouraging people to buy cheap garbage that don't know better.
Right.
Like say that
exactly.
I got this cheap ass product for free. I'm gonna do this review on it and make it sound super cool so that they'll tentatively send me cool stuff and I'm gonna get a bunch of views because I said this was the best aquarium light on the face of the planet ever in my title on YouTube. You're just encouraging people to buy junk. And then people there was actually a thread on Get Gills the other day, and a lady was asking why she what lights people use because she's bought a bunch of different lights and they all crap out on her. It's like, quit buying cheap crap and quit encouraging other people to buy cheap crap and buy something decent. There's a million product reviews on, especially if you look at Higer and whatever, do what you need to do to make your buck. That's all they're trying to do. They're just sending free equipment out for reviews, and it's nonsense. It's just like I said, everyone's and I'm not saying their products are junk. I haven't used their products, but I've seen this play out a million times where a company comes on the market, they send a bunch of their product out, and then people on YouTube make crappy reviews, quote unquote, and then everybody else and their brother goes out and buys it, and it's good for 3 or 4 months. And like, oh wait, this thing didn't last. I'm not saying Higer won't last. I'm saying in general, I've seen this play out, and you'll see it a lot on so a lot of companies from a certain country still they will sell you a product like a CO2 regulator on Amazon, and then they will refund you the money after you leave a 5-star review. So they'll post on Facebook saying, "Hey, we're giving out free products in exchange for 5-star reviews." And what they do, um, and I'll ruffle some feathers here again, but I'm sure you guys are familiar with F Zone. They make CO2 regulators
No, I don't mess with that
cheaper
stuff.
and
So no.
stuff. Yeah. So if you're familiar with F Zone, you would purchase their equipment through Amazon. You'd leave your 5-star review, and then they would PayPal you the money because they couldn't do the refund on Amazon or it would look sketchy. So they would use a third party source to send your money back to you. So you get the free product, they get a purchase on Amazon plus a 5-star review, so they look super awesome. And now if you look at like companies like F Zone, a bunch of their reviews are just paid for because they gave away free product in exchange for a 5-star review.
Now,
Uh,
all right, let's.
Shame, for real.
I just want to throw this out there. There are many people out there that think I'm a complete idiot, but they do not think I'm a complete idiot because I can't keep fish. They actually respect my opinion when it comes to like the strawberry leporinus, for example. Yeah, they respect my opinion. They think I'm a complete idiot because I talk about other stuff besides fish keeping, and I come across as a complete idiot. Uh, but I would never in my entire life just BS somebody into buying something because then I lose my integrity and my credibility altogether.
mhm.
And I would never do that. My credibility is in question because of other things I say that's not related to fish keeping. Um, I would, I personally think you're a moron if you're going to talk about anything that you only know for a couple weeks.
Mhm.
You know, you've got to test these products out. You got to try them out. You've got to own this fish. You know, before you start talking about an animal, you need to own it for at least a year. You know, before you can actually talk about it. You know, and that's just how I feel. And I honestly feel that the reason I have the people that follow me is because they do know that they're gonna get that honest to God opinion, and all the other crap is just entertainment aside. But if I'm gonna talk about this hobby, I'm gonna talk about it from a real world spectrum. You
Mhm.
know, I'm gonna talk about the real world, you know,
Right.
and what I know from a long term standpoint.
Mhm.
I get it. But listen, I gotta go. I gotta get up at 4.
All right, Skipper. Thanks for stopping by, bud.
Damn, I wish I had tomorrow off because we could go for hours on
Yeah.
this right now. But thank you, Bud, for inviting me up. Everybody in chat, it was nice seeing y'all again. And Terry, it's been a
Skip,
pleasure. See
always.
you guys.
Yep. See you, Tom. And Johnny, who he works with Dan over at Dan's Fish. He kind of hit the nail on the head pretty good. The freshwater hobby is all about the cheapest option. And I also feel
That's not
like
always that's not always the case. There are some freshwater keepers out there that are putting up some of the coolest systems ever.
it's a very small portion of the market, though, generally speaking. And I think we see so many people leave the hobby after a short period of time because initially they buy all the cheap crap. And guess what happens when you buy cheap crap? You have problems, and then you
Yeah,
get frustrated, and then you don't want anything to do with it ever.
right.
You're over it, right?
Yep.
Um, So if you look at, we'll talk, you know, I'm big on planted tanks and CO2, right? So if you look at planted tanks, I was like, okay, I went out and I bought this cheap planted light from Amazon, and I wanted to get CO2, so I got this cheap CO2 setup, um, and now I've got algae up the wazoo. Well, because the advent of LEDs are affordable, and a lot of LEDs can produce a lot of light, not necessarily quality light, but a lot of
Not
light,
necessarily the right spectrum, but
right? And then you go get a cheap CO2 setup that's going to be, uh, a lot of them are inconsistent, and inconsistent CO2 is worse than no CO2 when it comes to a planted tank. And like, oh, I have all these algae problems, even though I got CO2 like everybody said, and I got a nice light like everybody said. And there's like, I'm over it. I'm not going to do CO2 ever. I really don't have any more interest in planted tanks, and they get out. Same with just fish only tanks. Like, oh, well, I bought a cheap uh, no name filter off Amazon, and I've had all these headache problems with it, and I'm just gonna get out of fish. Uh,
here's the thing that gets me, that I try to teach every single new freshwater keeper. Like, look, all these tanks look extremely ugly. Every one of them. Extremely ugly looking tanks. God, there is algae on that tank that's that thick. However you get, it's that thick. The water inside the tank is perfectly healthy. Okay, it's just unsightly. All right, and
right,
you can gradually control that. If you want your show tank, you want that tank that looks fantastic. Yeah, it might start out like that, but you can gradually take that down to turn it into a show tank. Just because you got a shit ton of algae, algae does good things.
right,
It,
and
it it makes your water healthy, believe it or not. It's absorbing nutrients. It's doing what it's supposed to do.
and
And just because it looks like crap doesn't mean your fish aren't healthy.
right, and so I like planted tanks. I appreciate a nice planted display. My tank upstairs is a
Sure.
planted. It's a planted display. It's a show tank. It's in my living room so people can look at it, enjoy it. I get to look at it, enjoy it. It involves a specific set of work to do that. Um, it also involves a different set of work to not only make that tank look good, but function properly. So I get aquascaping, and the advent of these fancy aquascaped planted tanks are definitely attractive. But at the same time, when people mention having, particularly if they want to breed fish, or just keep fish and keep them healthy, so an aesthetically pleasing tank isn't always the best route to go. If you look at, I actually found,
If I put
and
if I put baby fish in that ugly ass tank up there, they're gonna last a lot longer than if I put
mhm.
them into one of those bare clear
Oh,
tanks up
for sure,
there.
for sure. And so I actually found it's an Australian YouTube channel that focuses on biotope and biotype aquariums, but they also have a lot of footage of like rainbows and like a natural creek and stuff. Um, And if you look at a fish's natural environment, which we don't often get to see, right? Most people have no idea where their fish come from, what it looks like, what's in the water. It's a lot different than what you think, and it's not necessarily. It's aesthetically pleasing from a certain perspective. You have to have a certain mindset to appreciate what that environment looks like. And our tanks are not in that environment. However, uh, particularly if you use like botanicals, you just let algae kind of go, it provides so much microflora and microfauna, and things that we don't see that benefit the aquarium, and particularly if you're breeding fish. Like you can you can still do water changes and still have a messy tank because of algae, etc. But the benefits of all the things that you don't see right away, are tough to measure.
You're familiar with creating a oh crap, what do they call it? Damn it, my brain's not working. Um, not zooplankton, but what's the other microfauna? If you take a jar,
Like
make it
infusoria
go
or green
crazy.
water
Yeah,
or
thank you.
okay.
Infusoria, and green water, because they go hand in hand.
Mhm.
Infusoria and green water kind of go hand in hand. They're usually together in the same container. And one of the best rainbow breeders I ever talked to said, you've got two choices when you're breeding rainbows. You can take the eggs, put them in a clean environment, and take the soup, which the soup is the green water and infusoria, to the fish, or you can just take the fish and dump them in the soup. This is what I'm talking about, like a tank like that. That tank has got so much infusoria in it, it's not even funny. So if I had some rainbow fish eggs, I could put them in there, and they would get big enough to where I could put them on, baby brine, or maybe something smaller. But the infusoria in that tank is incredible. I can see it. If you look really close, there's all these little organisms all just swimming around in it, and it's just crazy.
Mhm.
If you want to put baby fish, you want to put them in that big ass ugly tank right there. That's where you want to put them.
So Zen mentioned she bought a bunch of cheap lights because she had a lot of tanks. And that's like, so if you are setting up a planted tank, that's a lot different than setting up a bunch of breeder tanks. So
Yeah, because I
spend
was gonna say the lights in here are the cheapest you can ever
right.
find.
So I'm actually making a video on lighting my fish room that I've built downstairs. I've got 30 tanks to light. I use cheap LEDs because I don't care what plants do or don't grow in them. If they grow algae, they're all set up for breeding, so I don't really care. So you don't have to spend $1 million just to light a tank, but buy yourself something nice. And Johnny from Dan's Fish said he went through 3 Beamsworks before he learned his lesson. If you are going to, if you have a goal for the tank to be successful uh, with whatever it is, whether it's corals or plants or even filtration, set yourself up for success and buy quality equipment. That doesn't mean the most expensive equipment, but buy nice things. It lasts a long time, and they pay for themselves in no time. Particularly like CO2 setups. A lot of people like to cheap out on CO2 because they just want to test the waters. So in 2005, I spent $150 on my CO2 setup that I've used every day since then. I still use it today, minimum of 8 hours a day. Uh, and I make roughly, just selling trimmings out of my display tank, $100 a month. And I've done that every day since I set it up. No maintenance. Compare that to like a cheap $40 or $50 Amazon regulator, and you would have had to replace that a few times, no question. So it pays to have nice things. Like I said, you don't have to go buy a GLA $500 regulator, but set yourself up for success. Instead of the cheap Chinese brand filter, buy something decent that's going to have good build quality initially, and then product support. A lot of these, a lot of stuff is outsourced, obviously, but a lot of them at least have US based customer service. Um, so if you're in the US, obviously I know we got some foreigners that aren't based in the US, but buy equipment that you're going to be able to get support for. Like if you look at the Fluval lights, they don't have the highest output, but they have a pretty good build quality and they have really good customer service. Makes it great. A lot
Should
of
we
people,
should we all go out and buy Kessels?
no, no, not at all. Like I said,
Because I can't afford that crap.
buy something that works for your goals. You don't have to spend $1 million. If you have the money to spend $1 million, whatever, go for it. But if you're on a lower budget, I was in college when I started setting up my planted tanks in the early 2000s, so I get what it's like to live on ramen. Sometimes it's
Shrimp or
sometimes sometimes it's worth waiting and saving some pennies instead of getting a cheap regulator now. Maybe in 2 months, if you set a buck aside every day, get yourself something nice. So buy once, cry once, right? Or buy right or buy twice are kind of the mottos I try to live by, because I've cheaped out on things before, and it ended up costing me, 2, 3 times as much in the long run, trying just having to go back and do it right. So that's my 2 cents on cheap equipment and that crap.
Never, ever, ever buy cheap equipment. Don't buy cheap food. Don't buy cheap lights. Don't buy cheap pumps. Just don't do it.
Right. And I see a
Um,
lot of, so you mentioned cheap food. I see a lot of people, and you can spend, apparently, I don't personally spend the money on it. There's some really expensive prepared foods out there, like insanely expensive. And so it's like there's a lot of YouTube reviews on that too. Like, oh, my fish love this, blah blah blah. I was like, okay, well, uh, they probably eat the other food just fine. But feed quality food. Don't just feed a bunch of like flour fillers and cornmeals and
well,
stuff.
see, that's what I meant about cheap food is like the grocery store Hearts brand flake food. Don't do
Oh
it.
yeah, for sure.
You
But
know,
if people
it,
want to, if you want to, people want to cheap out on food, they're like, what's the best cheapest food I can offer my fish? If you aren't feeding live foods, then you're wrong. For one, my 2 cents. Uh, Live foods are arguably the cheapest food out there. It's self-replicating. It's literally an endless source with very minimal input. With regards to, I'd argue, most types of live food, whether it's uh, baby brine shrimp, micro worms, vinegar eels, white worms, banana worms, Walter worms, you pick it. Uh, it's literally, it's next to nothing. It's damn near free, and it's the healthiest food that you can offer, if you ask me. There's some good quality prepared foods out there, but why not feed fish what they actually eat? And combined with that, yeah, you're getting a lot of, and this is like things people don't think about. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but those raw enzymes and raw proteins that aren't processed.
there's a lot to be said with that. I've noticed that if you talk to any quality fish breeder, once a fish reaches a certain size where you can actually feed baby brain shrimp that are hatched within 8 hours, they'll all tell you it's a superfood. Because you are getting those exact things. You are getting more than just protein. You're getting enzymes. You're getting everything that fish needs to build itself.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't think there. People always ask, well, is there prepared food I can feed my fry? Uh, yeah, there's that real popular one. What's it called? By First Bites.
First Bites
I
by Hikari.
as far as I'm concerned, First Bites suck, but that's my opinion.
Hmm.
And my opinion can only amount so much. There are some other prepared foods that I think are way better. There you can buy any size of golden pearls you can think of. But you ask any breeder, what's the superfood? All of them are gonna say baby brain shrimp.
Right. Uh, and a lot of people, they have questions because they want to be successful. I'm like, all right, that's great. Um, I want to help people be successful, and some of, my go-to advice is initially, obviously, have a goal for what you want to do with whatever you're doing. But find, whether it's excuse me, find either a fish room that you like. Find, if you're into planet tanks, find somebody that builds really nice planet tanks. If you want to breed fish, find somebody breeding the fish you want to breed, and emulate what they're doing, because obviously it's working. I'm not saying there aren't other ways to get there, right? But if you look at
Especially if they're close by.
yeah,
Here, you have a person that's using your water parameters and doing what you're trying to accomplish, then by all means emulate what they're doing.
right.
Absolutely.
If you know, you look at all these fish rooms, fish farms, fish breeders, everybody that's successful is feeding baby brine shrimp, right? For the most part.
Yeah,
There's a few
we all
few
know
anomalies.
it except for the people that don't want to do it.
And I don't know, is it a little bit of work? I don't know. It takes 2 minutes. You scoop a 2 liter bottle, and Terry's got a good video out there of his hatcheries that he builds with, 3, 4 2 liter bottles set up. It's cheap to set up. You use a soda bottle, tip it upside down, and some airline tubing,
It's so easy and so quick, and you
and
get to
then
you can clean them and go
right,
and
get yourself
dude,
some rock salt
I
and a big can of eggs, and go like, oh
boom, you're
well,
done.
a can of brine shrimp eggs, like a 1 pound can, is like $50. I was like, sure, but do you know how long that 1 pound can is going to last you? Even with 30, 40 tanks feeding every day? Like,
Yeah,
sure.
it'll last you a while.
And then Zen said that she feeds bug bites and rapashi. If you look at bug bites, it's a less processed food. So there's a lot more insects in it, which is a more natural food than a lot of the stuff we feed. And rapashi's a pretty good food that you mix and prepare. So I do feed rapashi. It's pretty good stuff. I like it. Danny said brine shrimp loves spirulina, which is a superfood. So you have a superfood eating a superfood, turning it into a super duper food.
Yeah, see, but Danny wants to create where he's feeding adult brine shrimp to his fish. That's not what we're talking about if you're talking about breeding where you're feeding baby fish.
Right.
So it's apples and oranges at that point.
So it goes into gut loading brine shrimp a little bit, I guess. So raising them old enough to feed and then feeding those to your fish. I know there's a lot of debate on how much nutritional value you get out of a freshly hatched brine shrimp versus a 12-hour-old brine shrimp versus a 24-hour-old brine shrimp. Uh, I feed brine shrimp morning and at night, so I don't care how old they are. I'm just gonna keep feeding them. I never have them sitting around long enough that they've consumed all the nutrients available.
Right, right.
I did.
And it's honest to God that you brought that up, but there is some truth to it. Is when you're feeding baby fish, you're feeding baby brine shrimp, you're feeding that yolk sac. You'll let you let an adult brine shrimp grow to full size unless it's gut loaded. It might as well be a potato chip.
Right. And Danny said he wants a colony. So I accidentally I left a hatchery for like, I bet it was probably 10 days or a little bit longer that I forgot I started and just never fed because it was off in a corner on my workbench or something. And I happened to look at it and there were full size adult brine shrimp in there just cruising around. I didn't do anything to it, didn't feed them anything. It was just a light on a 2 liter bottle. Yeah, but like
Yeah,
you said,
except there's probably only a quarter of what actually
oh
happened.
yeah, there were only maybe a dozen in there by that point in time, but they were just buzzing around. And so it would be interesting to set up, like, for the sake of just having like a bunch of adult brine shrimp for shits and giggles. It'd be interesting to see that. Uh,
What, a sea monkey tank?
so, but yeah, as far as using them as a food, uh, I don't know, feed them sooner or later. I usually have at least 2 cultures running at a time. So
Oh,
feed one in the morning,
absolutely.
feed one
Yep,
in the morning and one at night, and just
yep.
basically rotate them. And then I mix that in with probably once a week. I'll feed frozen bloodworms, and then I've got vinegar eels and micro worms, which I've got buddies that breed more fish than I do, and all they feed is baby brine shrimp. And like I said, they breed more fish than I do, but they're a little
You
more
know what
studious about their practices than myself.
what amazes me is how tiny baby brine shrimp are. and how big a fish will eat them.
Oh yeah.
I've watched full-grown adult angelfish suck down baby brine shrimp. Too quick to talk about, and I'm talking about big angelfish, where they can suck down, a half a cube of freaking bloodworms, and they'll still suck down baby brine shrimp
Oh
all
yeah.
day long. Adult guppies, no problem. They'll suck baby brine shrimp all day long.
Right. And I don't know. It's kind of cool because just because of the color of the brine shrimp, if you're feeding, you know, whether they're guppies or rainbow fry or whatever, you can actually see that they've consumed the baby brine shrimp other than just watching them hunt them down. They'll just get a big orange belly. You're like, you are just full of brine shrimp right now.
Right, baby angelfish. Oh my god! Before they're even showing their fins, where they just become free swimming, and you feed them, and you look at their stomachs, and their stomachs are bright orange. It's like if you eat another one, you're gonna pop, and they're just swimming around, going, "Yeah, I got a belly full."
Uh, uh, like Johnny said, he's got full size Geophagus wine miller eye, and they chowed on baby brine, and those
Oh,
guys.
absolutely.
I've never
I,
kept them, but those guys get what 6-8 inches probably. They're pretty big.
I can guarantee you just about every adult fish out there will eat baby brain shrimp.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's
They'll just keep sucking them in, however they filter them through their gills, and it'll wind up in their throat.
yeah. Like if you want to breed virtually any species of fish, if you feed them baby brine, you will have success.
I think so.
Like a lot of it is, people are like, oh, I see this a lot. So people are like, well, they'll post their tank and their terrible husbandry and their awful maintenance schedule. They're like, well, my fish spawn, so they must be happy. I was like, you do know that fish often spawn as a method of trying to survive, right? Trying to
Yeah,
continuously
last ditch effort. Oh my fuck, we're gonna die.
right. Look at killifish. They live in literal footprints of animals and mud puddles, and they lay their eggs like, oh, well, I hope they hatch eventually for the success of our species, right? So just because your fish are spawning doesn't mean that you have good practices or
We're
whatever.
not, dude. We're not any different. If you're on that plane that's gonna crash, you got
What
a
are you gonna
chance.
do?
If you look over to that really cute girl 3 seats down, you got a chance because that plane's gonna crash.
She has the same options you do, right?
Right? You got a chance, man. Sorry.
uh,
All
oh
right,
no,
I'm done. I gotta get out of here.
oh no, we're just getting started.
Sorry for bringing Team Detritus into that one.
We're just getting started. But no, it's like even if you. Well, my point is that even if you have, you know, terrible living conditions and subpar water parameters, if you are getting good nutrition through quality foods, you'll still have a good chance of successfully spawning, right?
Sure.
So good foods are, particularly when you're trying to spawn fish, are quite important. So don't you can't, even if you have pristine water, you're like, I'm trying to breed these apistos that need a temperature of 74.5, a pH of 6.2, and 69 TDS. But all I'm doing is feed them flake food. Well, you're probably not going to see a lot of success, even if the water is perfect, um, just because they don't have, and you see this in humans too, with, well, different biological processes. Uh, if a body does not have sufficient nutrition, it will not go through certain processes involved in reproduction.
Sure.
So,
Absolutely. All right.
with
Anyway, dude, keep up your stream. Get Danny up here. Get some other people up here. I gotta go. I gotta get some sleep. I got a busy day tomorrow.
All
Always
right, Terry.
love talking to you, and glad you're having fun tramping around the world.
Yeah, the job has its perks sometimes. The
Sure,
fish
absolutely.
rooms get neglected, but the job has its perks, so I
Well,
can't
that's all
complain much.
right. You're tramping around the world.
Right. All right.
All
Thanks,
right,
Terry. Appreciate it.
I'm out.
Yep. We'll see ya. Well, that was interesting. It started getting a little squirrely at the end, as can be expected. So thanks for bearing with me. If anybody wants to chat, I know there's a few of you guys in there that I've seen in the old chat before. Uh, Danny, I haven't talked to you in a while, man. If you want to chat, you're more welcome to. Uh, Anyone else? I posted the link in the chat. We got 15 people hanging in there. I appreciate your guys' time. Hopefully, you guys are getting a little entertainment out of it, if nothing else. But if you can find something informative, and maybe if there's something that we said that made you think about something a little bit differently, that'd be great. Leave a comment. Let me know. Or if you have any questions on kind of stuff we've rambled about. We got into the topic a little bit with Danny about the nutrition found in freshly hatched shrimp versus adult shrimp. Danny did point out, and I agree with him, that there is still a substantial amount of protein and stuff in adult shrimp or older shrimp. So it's definitely, I wouldn't say it's a waste, or I wouldn't say they're useless or there's no nutritional value in them at all. Obviously, you'd have to do a pretty in-depth um, nutritional analysis. You don't have to be camera ready. You can just bullshit and talk with us. You can shut your camera off. Uh, like I said, with different ages of brine shrimp, you'd have to do a nutritional analysis and how much is actually absorbed by the fish or whatever. Um, but I don't know. I just make it a habit myself. I feel like if I feed, and if I set up a culture and 24 hours later I feed it and then set it up again, it's just a routine. So regardless of the nutrition content, developing that routine um, is definitely important. And like I said, going back to quality foods, whether it's your fish, yourself, or your food culture. So yeah, you have to feed your food culture. So feed them something that they're going to benefit from, and you'll get nutrition on the backside of that in the form of a more more nutritional, uh, more nutritionally complete food source for your fish. Um, where was I going? Lost my train of thought. Damn it, Danny. We were talking about feeding brine shrimp, and then I lost it. Oh, there was a question. Let me think of a question I saw on Facebook. I'm trying to recall which one it was, though. Danny. With all this chatting, you might as well just come up on the stream and actually talk. It'd probably save yourself the hassle of having to type everything out. Makes it easier to multitask too, and you can just chat in one location and work on whatever else is working on. But we were getting into the whole point of the stream before I actually knew anybody would come up and chat was to address some Facebook questions. And now I remember. So one of the questions that I saw was less of a question, but a post that I thought was interesting to address, um, and it leads to success, generally speaking. Somebody posted that they made a calendar they had roughly 6 to 9 tanks, and they made a calendar of their water changes and when they changed how much water in each one. Um, and I think if you're trying to track your tanks, that's not a bad idea. Myself, see you vibes. Appreciate you stopping by. Myself, so I do when I'm home, obviously, fit all my tanks. I think I've got roughly 30 set up right now. Everything gets 50% once a week. Um, and that is a maintenance routine that works for me, and I've created a routine out of it. When I'm home, feed the tanks in the morning, feed the tanks at night. Part of my routine of feeding in the morning is I feed a brine shrimp culture, I start a new one. Same thing at night, feed my other brine shrimp culture, start a new one. That's my routine. So when a lot of people talk about being successful with their aquariums, developing a routine that is easy for you to do and works for you is a large part of it. So I generally recommend, personally, 50% water changes once a week, largely because I've been quite successful with that routine. Um, and I think it's largely beneficial to your fish. If you look at a lot of the people breeding whatever, they do 50% or more a week, and they'll often do it several times a week, depending on what they're trying to do. That allows them to feed more. If you're trying to grow out fish, you can feed more without worrying about water quality issues, etc. That's a routine that works for them. So when people talk about being successful with their aquarium, find a routine that works for you. That may not be 50% once a week. That may be 50% every 2 weeks or 50% a month if that works for your tank. Every tank, is different. Some people do more, some people do less. But find something that works for you and you can be consistent with. And if 50% a week feels like a lot of work to you, um, you're not going to want to do it. You're like, oh, I got to do water changes today. What a pain in the ass. That's a headache, right? So find something, maybe 50% every 2 weeks is something that works for your schedule, whether you have, busy kids. Um, so maybe every 2 weeks you can fit in your water change. Just be consistent with it and make a routine out of it. So you don't have to feed your fish every morning and every night. Feed your fish every night. You know, that's routine. It's consistent, right? Consistency. There's two things that, regardless of your goals, um, it's with particularly with aquariums, but in life in general, um, consistency and patience are going to go a long way. So get off my soapbox for 2 minutes. Just my 2 cents on having success and things that can lead to success. Danny asked who watches my tanks when I'm gone. My wife does actually, um, and when I'm on the road, she usually feeds them once a day, once every other day. And tanks that need topped off, she'll do top offs. I've been gone for up to 2 months and some change at a time, having a bunch of tanks running. And I'll get the tanks in real good shape before I leave, and then she'll just do top offs and feed prepared foods while I'm gone. I could probably convince her to feed live foods, um, but she's already doing me a favor and taking care of 30 fish tanks. So I don't want to put her out anymore. She enjoys my fish. She enjoys the hobby as well. She's not into it as much as I am, but she enjoys it enough that she can feed once a day or once every other day, and then top off any tanks with some RO that are running low due to evaporation or whatever. And then when I get home, uh, I do a water change, and often me being gone and them getting a little less food, water levels getting a little lower, water quality might be diminishing a little bit. And then I get home, I hit it with a big water change and start smashing with food. That'll induce spawning a lot of the time. So, uh, so yeah, like I said, I was gone for about 3 weeks for work. The Nanoluteus were in, not super clean water conditions, just getting fed once a day. As soon as I get home, hit each tank with 75% of cool, straight RO and started smashing them with baby brine shrimp. And boom, in a couple days, started spawning away. So there's a few other tricks people have used to get fish to spawn, particularly if you look at Corydoras are particularly interesting, and some of the tricks that people use to spawn them. Uh, I, so they'll actually often let the water level drop, let the temperature heat up for weeks, months. I've seen a few logs where they kind of conditioned them for months, didn't feed them much, um, and then when the weather turned around and looked good, there was a rainstorm coming in, so the pressure dropped. Uh, they smashed it with a big cold water change and a lot of food, and boom, Next thing you know, they got fish. So a lot of people spawn fish seasonally. A buddy of mine over in Iowa breeds Rhinogobius zui, and he said they only spawn in the winter, whether that's barometric conditions or other things associated with the time of the year. But he said they never spawn in the summer, just the winter. Uh, Seasons is a great way to look at it, and that's kind of goes with what I just said about the Corydoras, where you know a lot of the times we think of, and I think was it Bob Steenfot maybe talked about this a little bit. I can't remember. I know like Scott Fellman's talked about it a lot on his podcast, The Tint. But we try to achieve a stable environment, and stable is good. Like I said, consistent is good. But our fish in the wild have a consistent environment, but it's not necessarily always stable, right? Like they go through seasons, right? So that's why a lot of the times these cold water changes induce spawning, because that simulates the wet seasons coming. They go through a long dry season where they experience higher than normal temperatures, maybe higher than desirable, but they survive diminished water conditions where they end up living in, sometimes really slow moving streams or even just puddles or ponds by the end of the season before they get a big water change for the rainy season. That rainy season comes in. So food gets scarce. It's warm, water levels low. Food gets scarce as things dry up. And then the rainy season starts. You get a rush of cold water that rainy season, maybe some snow melt off the mountains coming down into the river. And then you get an explosion of what else? A food source, right? So whether that's micro critters or fairly large insects that are emerging, right? You have all this new water for the uh, the fish to move around in, with these inundated forest floors that have been dry for so long. Uh, the water levels rise due to the rain, the melt off. These fish can move into new areas and find all these new food sources, and that induces spawning, right? Nutrition is a large part of it. Um, with improper nutrition, a fish simply doesn't have the resources to expend, whether it's the energy or the nutrients to expend into spawning. Spawning can often be fairly taxing on the fish. Look at you know humans. It's stressful, right? It's hard on your body. Not necessarily all of us, but at least the females, it's hard on your body, right? It takes a lot of extra nutrients to support two people, right? So imagine laying like this jewel cichlid here on this book, literally hundreds of eggs. That takes a lot of nutrients. You have to eat well to establish those nutrients before you can spawn, right? So, uh, so part of the season is the influx of food, the cool water. One thing leads to another, and that's how that goes. So, yeah, great point, Danny. Seasons. It's a good way to put it. A lot of people keep their fish tanks the same temperature year round. Um, I personally let mine cool off in the winter a little bit. One, it's more energy efficient on me, so my electric bill appreciates it. And then two, in the summer, I usually let it warm up some. It replicates their natural environment. People are like, oh well. A lot of times you're like, well, we need to keep our temperature at exactly 78 degrees all day, right? People are afraid of temperature swings. Keep in mind, a lot of our fish are found in fairly shallow water in nature, and they may move from a deeper part of a pool or a pond where the temperature maybe it's a little bit cooler, higher oxygen concentrations. Temperature may be high 60s, mid 70s, and then move up into the shallows to feed, where the water temperature near the surface might be 80 degrees, 80, 85, right? So just throughout the day, our fish go through temperature swings. Okay. Uh, so, and then obviously throughout the year, if you look at any body of water, um, in a lot of places that experiences seasons, um, you'll see obviously in the winter, the spring, that body of water cools down. In the summer, that body of water warms up. So it's quite natural just to see some shifts or changes in temperature. I'm not saying you should automate your heater to warm up and cool down your tank 10 degrees every day. But understand that the temperatures, not having the exact same 78 degrees year round isn't the end of the world. 65 to 70 all the time. I keep my house at 72, and the 125 is in my living room, and I do not heat it. So 70, 72, somewhere there. I don't know what the water temperature is. I've got right now Radinocentris or Natus Tiwa Creek in there, and they are spawning and doing just fine. I think while some fish are obviously fairly sensitive, and there's a lot of factors that go into it, people think fish are a lot more sensitive and fragile creatures than they really are. And I'd like to do a project on this one day, because a lot of people keep. It depends on the fish, of course, but live bears in tubs outside, right? Well, they'll put them out in the spring, and they'll see temperatures at night. The water temperature will get down into the low 60s, the mid 50s, and this works with Neocaridina shrimp as well. And then in the summer, water gets up into the mid 80s. So there's this wide range of temperatures, and generally speaking, relatively, these bodies of water, whether it's a 50-gallon tub outside, 100-gallon tub, 300-gallon tub, that's a fairly small body of water. If it's not down in the ground, it's not insulated, right? So you're going to see some pretty decent temperature swings throughout the day. So there is, like I said, stability is important, consistency is important, uh, but understand uh, that if things happen slowly, not instantaneous, you don't want to dump 100-degree water. Uh, if you have a 40-gallon tank, you don't want to take 30 gallons of 100-degree water and dump it in there right away during a water change, right? That's a rapid swing. That's not going to work very well. But sometimes replicating those natural temperature swings, influxes and shortages of food, um, can sometimes help your fish and trigger certain activities. And Bentley actually just did a video the other day, a live stream, about is a fish room worth it? And one of the topics discussed was, depending on how many tanks you have, it may be cheaper to heat your room, right? It's like I have 30 tanks in my basement. In one room, it's definitely cheaper to heat that room and run all those off a single air pump in one heater for the room. So, well, uh, one of the other questions I saw while I was perusing Facebook earlier. Like I said, I'm on my laptop, so I was riding the struggle bus a little bit earlier, so I had to shut some stuff down. But one of the questions I saw on Facebook was, and you see it a lot more often than you probably should, the use of carbon or activated carbon specifically in planted tanks. And I think we're finally getting away from it, but there's kind of the misunderstanding that using activated carbon type filter media will strip the nutrients or the fertilizers that you're dosing into your aquarium and absorb those as well. Uh, Unfortunately, it was believed for a while that happened, and there's still a fairly large general belief that does occur. So be like, well, you're just wasting your fertilizers, whatever. What's up, Nick? It's inaccurate, right? So carbon has a high affinity to adsorb a lot of nutrients, but the macros and micros that we care about for our planted tanks, it just little to none for most of them, right? Little to none. So whatever you're dosing into your tank really isn't getting tied up by the carbon at all. So no worries there. Dose away. If you want to run activated carbon in your tank for whatever reason, go for it. It's not going to be detrimental to your plant growth in terms of nutrients, right? So glad to have you, Nick. There's still a handful of you guys hanging out. Uh, over the course of time, my streams have gotten smaller and smaller, and that's okay. We used to have 30 people or so here every now and then, and now we're down to 10, 15, and that's just fine. I appreciate your guys' time, and spread the word if you feel like it's worth spreading. Otherwise, I'll help what I can, answer questions when I can. Um, and if it's just somebody like me and Terry or Skipper or Danny having a conversation about nerdy fish stuff, so be it. Sounds like a pretty good time to me. Uh, I'd argue likely not. So Danny mentioned that he put activated charcoal in his substrate when he set it up. Um, I'm not saying it didn't, but not likely a sufficient amount, right? And activated carbon or charcoal is only active for so long before it's no longer doing anything other than provide surface area for things to grow on. Oh, Danny's being a hero over here, dropping everybody's channels. Again, Danny, thanks for all the help tonight. Appreciate it, bud. What are some other questions that I saw? So that I had a bunch of tabs open, and I went and deleted them all because my laptop was running like a piece of garbage. If you guys have any questions, feel free to speak up. I know there's only a few of you actually chatting in the chat right now, so if you're lurking, appreciate it. Hopefully, I'm not putting you to sleep. I'll probably run this thing for about 10 more minutes. We'll just call it 2 hours even. And then I've got class tomorrow, bright and early in the morning. So I'll be busy tomorrow night. Maybe if nothing's going on, I'll pop up and stream. If somebody wants to chat or if somebody's got some questions, I can address them. So one of the reasons, so I'm down here for a month in Oklahoma for some training, and one of the things I planned on doing while I was down here was a lot of times like people recommend books or they'll ask about books on Facebook or different forums, right? So what I'd like to do is I brought a few with me. This is The Optimum Aquarium by Horst and Kipper, which is a little bit older book. What I want to do is read through this and then give you guys kind of a book review. So I don't want to give away everything. I'm not going to read like the book word for word. This is going to be an audio book where I just like drone on. I drone on bad enough as it is, especially with this damn cold that's kicking my ass right now. But I want to kind of touch base on what's included in the book and some high points, maybe some low points, and give you guys kind of a book review, and maybe that will help you guys determine uh, whether buying something like the Optimum Aquarium or Sunken Gardens is worth your time to buy, right? So there's some like I said, this is old school. Look at those high end graphics, super cool stuff. I don't want to just read everything in the book and tell you guys everything that's going on because that wouldn't be fair to the authors of the book, right? And it wouldn't be the most benefit to the end user. I don't think. I think if I give you guys some high points and low points, um, and it encourages you to read the whole book, you can read it for yourself. Uh, Maybe I interpreted something a little bit different, or maybe you picked on something that I didn't notice. But I think my hope is that if I give you high points and low points of a book, it encourages you to read it, and then you go out and grab this. You can grab this for like $5 or $6 on eBay anymore. Just like I said, it's an older book. Um, I like to do a review on it, see if it encourages you to read it, and then by you reading it and listening to me babble about it, hopefully that can induce the most absorption of information, right? So if that's something that you guys think would be worthwhile, let me know. Like I said, I've got a couple books that I'm gonna do it with regardless, just to see how it goes. If people think it's useless, then tell me it's useless, and I'll quit doing it. Otherwise, um, I think some of these books that I have, like I said, I bought them from an old fish breeder. Um, might be pretty interesting to see how information has just changed, and if nothing else, it'll provide uh, some good talking points, I think. So, be curious to see, how methods have changed over the times based on, the information that we know or we thought we knew. It's interesting to see, like different plants or fish will be popular for a while and then they'll disappear for like 10 or 20 years and then all of a sudden somebody will like decide to start keeping it again. Everyone's like, "Oh my god, this is so cool. Where's like I've never heard of this." Like, well, 15, 20 years ago it was super common, super popular, and it kind of fell off the face of the earth. Um, it depends. There's some good ones out there. Um, sometimes they're better for just getting ideas from. Um, and there's some that are, you know, maybe not worth the cash or the time. Uh, there are a lot of books which, even if you don't agree with what's in them, it's useful to hear a different approach to things and try to understand people's methodology and their way of thinking as to how they approach the project. Even if the data in it isn't entirely correct, it might inspire you to try something, or if you think it's not correct, maybe it'll inspire you to do something and report back and show exactly why that was or wasn't correct. So, uh, unfortunately, these days it seems like there's fewer and fewer people interested in actually reading books, but there is still a lot of useful information out there. Unfortunately, due to the way that media has developed and evolved, a lot of the books that are out there um, were published in the see 70s, 80s, early 90s. So we don't have like present books. Instead, we have YouTube and various websites. I think this was um, first printed, and it says first edition 1986. So kind of cool. Says the ideas behind its development and content were laid down by Horst and Kipper in the 1960s. So even information and ideas that are 60 years old can still be beneficial to us now. Uh, maybe we can look back on it and see what they did wrong and develop a new practice as to how to do it better. Or maybe we can try an old technique that people have kind of pushed off to the side and see if we have good success with it these days with different equipment, methodology, various different fish. So I've read this before, and a lot of the information, surprisingly, is still accurate to this day. So uh, I'll read this. I'll take notes, give you guys a review on it, see what we think. Nick said he thinks it sounds like a good idea. Um, I'll do the work. I'll make the video, and we'll see how many people do or don't agree with you, Nick. Another topic. Well, I was browsing Facebook posts, since I'll kind of touch on a few Facebook posts, since that was originally the topic of this live stream. Um, somebody posted, and there was recently a local swap meet, not local to me, but this was a swap meet for a club that I used to be involved in when I lived in Arizona. And they had obtained, excuse me, they had obtained some fish from a seller there, and they wanted to know some more information about that. And they were asking around to see if anybody knew who sold those particular fish. So as a seller, one thing you can do to help yourself be successful is to information on the bags, whether that's if you make a sticker that you slap on the bag and it's got maybe an email address and some information about the fish that you were selling. That way, that person has some information to use to get in touch with you. Maybe they have further questions. Maybe they're interested in spawning it, but swap meets get busy, and maybe they just didn't have the time to talk to you. That way, they can reach out to you, get the information. It'll help them be more successful with those fish they purchase from you, and it it if they're successful with those fish, they're going to spread your positive reputation around, speak more highly of you, and they're more likely to come back for something else, right? So if they had a good experience, if they know that you're helpful, they will be more likely to come back and potentially buy more fish from you, or maybe you just make friends, right? So despite some of the ideas out there and attempts by people to use this hobby to make some money, which you can. I'm not gonna tell you can't. It's good to just make friends too, right? So make connections. Um, if you're not in a local club, join one. If you can't find a local club, make one. Preach that all the time, and it's extremely beneficial. Always will be, even with the advent of face space and forums disappearing. Uh, it'll always be beneficial to be able to have that interaction in person, make new friends. There's people that I've met at swap meets 10 plus years ago that I'm still great friends with today. And I constantly utilize them to bounce ideas off of, uh, ask questions, obtain new fish or plant species from. So definitely something that you should consider doing. Um, so I've traveled up to 5 hours for a swap meet and roughly 2 hours for club meetings before, because there was a local club, or there was an additional local club that was good enough to make worth the drive. You don't have to be organized, Zen. You just have to be ambitious, right? Reach out, find some people, and you can group think that and turn it into a little group project, and boom, next thing you know, voila, you've got the newest, coolest fish club in town. And once it gets going, it generally, you get the ball rolling. You get organized as a group, maybe not necessarily as a person, but you get organized as a group, and then things really start moving in the right direction, and you gain a little attention from people, a little credibility, and things start moving up in a positive direction. But it's 11 o'clock, so I think we're going to call it a night there. Fish Guy Nick, Zen Ginger. Zen, you were here for the whole time. Appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by. Fish Guy Nick, Danny, everybody that swung by. Vibes, I know you're gone. Alishan was here. Brian was here for a little bit. Mark, Vinoxki, Johnny, thanks again. Appreciate all the support. It was definitely good to catch up with everybody. Fish Tropicana is still here, man. First and last out. Appreciate it. Once again, thanks, and keep an eye out for pop-up little streams like this, and we'll keep in touch. So have a good one. I think, if I'm not mistaken, let me look quick. I think Misfit is streaming right now. So go check out Misfit. Wealth of information, and a little bit different point of view maybe than some of the stuff that we talked about tonight. So here's a link over there. Tell them All Things Fish sent you, and I'll stop by for a few minutes. Have a good one, guys. We'll see you.